So I was mentioning that in the EU, they are really focusing on the importance of analyzing the irradiated food. So when you are exporting irradiated food, for example, to the US, so most probably, as long as you are declaring the Radura sample, they will not test the irradiation dosage. But in the EU, they are very picky, so they want to make sure that they adopt a standardized and validated method to detect the irradiation of the. So today, the legislation of irradiation, according to the EU, it authorized the irradiation. So currently, they are using irradiation for fruits, vegetables, cereals, spices and condiments, fish and shellfish, fresh meat, poultry, raw milk, egg white. So they extended the range of irradiation, but you have to look at every single European country to check the dosage. So they did not agree on a list of dosage to be used by all EU countries because, as you can see here, its use is limited but authorized in many countries. So it does not mean in all countries. Okay, so here concerning the Canadian regulation about irradiation, so you can see here that food irradiation is the treatment of food with different types of radiation energy called ionizing radiation. So it's being used to reduce microbial also load on spices, to control insects, etc. So the same almost definition. Is eating irradiated food safe? So if you go on the Canadian website and you check this question, so they will tell you that extensive research and testing resulted in considering is safe and effective to reduce harmful bacteria. And they are also considering that food treated with irradiation is shown also to retain its nutritional value, texture, and appearance, as well as taste. So Health Canada reviews petition to allow the irradiation process to be applied for different types of food before they can be sold in Canada. And the Food and Drugs Regulation also specify the source, the energy level, and the dose for every single type of. So you can see that in Canada, they are supporting the irradiation. So are these currently, are there currently any irradiated food sold in Canada? So here they tell you that to date, the following products have been approved by Health Canada for irradiation. So potatoes, onions, wheat, flour, spices, and dehydrated seasoning preparation. So you can see that they are not still expanding the usage for meat and poultry, but definitely it will come in the few coming years because it was the same in the EU and they changed. So they updated the usage. So is the irradiation of these food mandatory? So they are saying no, it's not mandatory. So you can use another type of treatment or you can use this type of treatment. But it's what is really important is to declare the Radura symbol and to respect the right amount of irradiation. So Canadian regulation about irradiation. So pre-packaged food that have been irradiated must display the symbol, okay? So as you can see, بما أنه they are bilingual in Canada, so within the symbol, so they mention irradiated and irradié. So they mention the French and the English the translation of the word Radura. So does treatment by irradiation guarantee the absence of disease-causing microorganisms? So here we already checked the question in the other regulations and they mentioned no, that it's not enough by itself. So here again, it does not guarantee zero risk. It reduces bacteria, but we should have another preservation technique assisting the irradiation. So here they are saying that irradiation is an optional tool that can be used by food industry to enhance the safety, but it should be well handled, well stored, well cooked, and you should prepare the food according to the right practices, including proper sanitation, packaging, storage, preparation, etc. So irradiation cannot restore the palatability of food that is already spoiled. So it does not mean if I'm starting with a material that is kind of spoiled and I will irradiate it, so I will consider that yes, it will become safe. No, it's not the scenario. So it cannot restore the spoiled food, okay? And if food looks, smell, or taste bad before irradiation, it will still look, smell, and feel bad after irradiation. So it has, it cannot solve a problem of spoilage. So to be clear on that. And the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, what it is told with respect to the irradiation. So the CFIA is responsible to enforce the regulation linked to irradiation under the Food and Drugs Act. So they do regular inspection to test and program if the food industries are in compliance with the Food and Drug Act regulations concerning irradiation. So the CFIA takes appropriate action if irradiated food which have not been approved for sale in Canada are not well labeled according to the Canadian, are found in the marketplace. So let's say if they realize that a product is irradiated and not declared as being irradiated, or with respect to the dosage, so they are using another dosage, not complying with the regulation. So what about Australia? So here, I can tell you that Australian regulation are also stricter than the US regulation. So here they declared on their page, according to the FAAS, that the irradiated food and food ingredients must go through an assessment, okay, before being sold. So you cannot simply sell any irradiated food in the Australian market. So this standard prohibits the irradiation of food or ingredients or component of food unless a specific permission is given. So if you do not take a permission from the Food Safety Authority in Australia, you are not allowed to dispatch in the Australian market irradiated food. So the specific permission may impose conditions to the dose, to the packaging material, and to approval of the premises using irradiation. So if the premises is up to the standard to irradiate food. So even when the standard permits irradiation, food should only be processed by irradiation when there is a specific technological need for this. So food should not be processed by irradiation as a substitution procedure for good manufacturing practices. So again, do not do not cause contamination and cross-contamination and then do it, because usually industries, they tend to do this. So they kind of abuse the right processing practices or manufacturing practices by relying on the fact that by the end, I will irradiate my food before dispatching it in the market, and this will provide a safe food for the market. So they are not with this idea, so they do not accept to use it as a procedure of replacement for good manufacturing practices. So the absorbed radiation dose should be the minimum possible, and simply, definitely it should be labeled. And if you can check this note mentioned on their page, food irradiation can only be used if there is no other safe method. So they are kind of against irradiation except in very exceptional cases. So food to be processed by irradiation used for intended use should be suitable quality and acceptable hygienic conditions for processing, should be very well handled, and they should be undertaken according to the state, territory, and New Zealand law governing radiation control. So they do have a radiation regulation and code of practice that should be respected. So this standard also sets out permitted sources of irradiation. We need to keep record of all what is being irradiated and about the dosage and as well about the labeling. Okay, so now I'll start with the second lecture. Do you have any question about irradiation?
No, doctor.
No, doctor.
Okay. So now I will start with the second part related to the food additives. Okay, so what is a food additive? So we all know that many years ago they tended to use the additives, but they were considering them as food improvement agents, such as salt, such as spices, such as herbs and seasoning. So they tend to use these products either to change the flavor of the food, to improve it, or to preserve the food, such for example of the usage of sulfur dioxide. Okay, so they tend to burn sulfur dioxide over the wine in order to extend its shelf life, or to salt fish and meat. And till now, some people, they tend to salt the fish in order to extend its shelf life. So all of these were used as food improvement agents. And with time, they realized that we have a category called food additives. So food additives, as per their name, so an additive is a substance added to the food to reach a certain technological purpose. So this purpose could be either to color the food, to flavor the food, to preserve the food, to sweeten the food, example, the sweeteners, to give more nutritional aspect of the food, okay, to be used as antibacterial, etc. So this is the EFSA definition of food additives. So they are substances added intentionally. So a food additive, it's being added intentionally on purpose. I'm aware about it to perform certain technological functions, for example, to color, sweeten, or help preserving the food. And you can identify the additives by the E numbers. Okay, this is the EFSA definition. The FDA definition. So in the broadest sense, a food additive is any substance added to the food. Legally, the terms refer to any substance, the intended use of which results or may be reasonably be expected to result directly or indirectly in its becoming a component or otherwise affecting the characteristic of the food. This definition includes substances used in the production, processing, treatment, packaging, and even transportation. So if you are adding, for example, plasticizers to the packages, they are actually packaging additives, but they are being considered as food additives as per the FDA. So they require a pre-market approval, okay? So the pre-market approval, so here, it depends. If you are willing to sell your product in the US, so it requires an FDA pre-market approval. If it's in the EU, it required an EFSA. And the codex, usually, they do not assess by alone, so they relied more, I feel like, on EU regulation, but they do not declare this bluntly. But EFSA do a very good job in assessing additives. So in the Codex Alimentarius, the definition is a bit similar to the EU, except that they are mentioning that whatever you are using in the packaging, transportation, or holding, it's being considered as food additives. So it should be clear that it's not an ingredient consumed by itself. I can never consume a colorant or consume a flavor. So it's not a characteristic ingredient, but it's added to attain a certain technological purpose. So here you can see just the Miranda with and without colorant, how it will look like, and you can understand why do we use food additives, because it will make it more appealing. And here I will go quickly over some terms related to food additives, such, for example, the intake of food. So the intake of additives, excuse me. So the intake of additive, it's the quantity that I'm consuming multiplied by the concentration of additives in this quantity. So the food consumption times the food additives concentration. And it's cumulative. So let's say, for example, that I'm eating chewing gum containing a potassium acetylsulfame, which is a sweetener. And then I'm drinking a light strawberry juice containing potassium acetylsulfame as a sweetener. So here I have to, it's cumulative, so I have to add both quantities. So the volume that I consumed from the drink times the concentration in this volume plus the chewing gum, so the portion that I consume times the quantity or the concentration in this quantity. So the acceptable daily intake, it is the amount of additive that is acceptable on a daily basis without causing any adverse health effect, okay? The maximum usage level is the maximum that I can use in the food to attain a certain technological purpose. So definitely it's being regulated. You will see for some additives, it's a quantum status. You can use as much as you want, such as the acetic acid, which is the vinegar. There's no regulation for the vinegar. It's an acetic acid, it's an additive, but you can use as much as you want. Citric acid is the same, and we have many other examples. So purity criteria, especially when we are extracting the additive from nature. For example, I'm extracting vanilla flavor from a natural source. So here I need to determine the purity criteria to make sure that I don't have impurities that can alter with my product. And here it's the E number. So E means that it's being approved by EU. The first digit tell us what is the coloring, and the other two will decide the, so the first digit tell us that it is a coloring, and the first two digits will specify the colorant. So here 02 is for a yellow colorant called titrazine. So it's very important when you purchase any additive to ask about the technical data sheet. So in the technical data sheet, you will be having all the details. So is it being exposed to radiation? What are the quality information pack? What is the name of the product? So material safety data sheet to make sure of the structure of the product, the name of the manufacturer, if it's any hazard that can occur from the usage of this product, how to use it in a proper way, and how to handle it without being exposed to any danger or risk, if it contains GMOs, genetically modified organisms, and if it can cause any allergy. So in this table, we can check the different categories of additives: 1 coloring, 2 preservatives, 3 flavoring, 4 antioxidants, 5 emulsifiers and stabilizers, 6 acids and bases, 7 sweeteners, and 8 nutrients. So here you can see the first digit according to EU, but we can see that for flavoring, there is no EU regulation as per the E number because you remember why we do not regulate flavors? Sabaya, do you remember why we do not regulate flavors?
Because I think there's too many.
Okay.
Kind
of there is too many, but on top of that, because one flavor can be composed of like 15 chemicals or 20 chemicals. So, and on top of that, you use the flavor in very, very small quantities. So if you are using a very small quantity and you have to assess for one flavor like 20 components, so it's not worth it to assess it as long as there is no complaint or feedback coming from the market. So basically, they do not regulate, but definitely it's obligatory to declare the usage of flavor on the label by mentioning either artificial or natural, identical, or it depends on the flavor. So for the others, you can see the numbers, and here it's very important to explain that sometimes the same additive can have a double function. For example, let's say if we're talking about, let's say citric acid, okay? So citric acid, it's an acid, okay, but it can also work as an antioxidant, okay? And we have many examples that can be presenting a double function. So here you can see the different purposes, okay? So the colors to improve the color or to restore the losses of colors, the preservative to extend the shelf life, flavoring to enhance the flavor, antioxidant to prevent oxidation, emulsifiers to make oil and water being mixed together, and stabilizers to stabilize this emulsion, acid and base to control the pH, sweetener to sweeten the food without adding sugar, and nutrients to increase the nutritive value. So here you can now be more familiar with reading the labels and checking the different ingredients we have, including the food additives. And I can tell you that Smarties at the time, like 5 years ago, they were relying on artificial colorants such as sunset yellow, sodium sorbate as a preservative, BHA as an antioxidant, and lecithin as an emulsifier and stabilizer. But nowadays, Smarties has changed as a company its strategy, and they are relying on natural colorant. And you can see that they are only using natural colorants in their products.
Like the Skittles.
كمان مظبوط. هلا كثير تغيروا اصلا. You can tell easily because the colors are not flashy. يعني colors كثير هيك fade colors باهتين. يعني they are not even attractive for the kids, but with time definitely they will يعني خلاص they will adapt to the new range of colors. Definitely it's a very good strategy adopted by Nestle company, especially that they did not change the price at the time. يعني وقت عملوا هالmove from artificial to natural ما غيروا أسعارهم. اوكي بس هلا غير أسعارهم لأسباب تانية بلبنان، بس هن ما غيروا سعر. So why do we use food coloring? As I mentioned, to give more attractive color, to restore the original color, and to ensure color consistency. Who can tell me why do we need color consistency? What does it mean? And who can give me an example about this?
Consistency in the product.
يعني if you look at these three colors, okay?
The product.
هو ثلاثة ممكن يكونوا orange juice. What is the difference?
They ensure we have the same product for the consumer acceptability.
Okay. So the
attractiveness.
Attractiveness, okay.
انه وقت الكونسيومر بياخد اول مره الاورنج جوس انه لونها اورنج لانه هو حبه، ثاني مره اذا لونها على يلو بحس انه هي منا اورنج، هي لمن يمكن او ما بيقعد بياخدها،
او ممكن يحسها انها سبويلد كمان. هيدا الشيء اللي بصير. Okay, so but in the industry sometimes they face these problems because this could be due to مثلا if the fruit is not mature enough، أو صار معهم مشاكل إنه non availability of the fruit they were obliged to mix concentrate with fresh fruit, etc. So they might face the problems. Sometimes they can rely on mixing mature with non-mature, هيك بيكسروا لونهم شوي لاثنيناتهم، أو they can use colorants. But in case they are willing to use artificial colorants, it's obligatory to declare this on the label. Okay, they have the option to use natural colorants. They do it sometimes, but why they don't do it all the time? Because it's very expensive to rely on natural colorants, and because a natural colorant is not stable. So if they will add a natural colorant and they will expose the product to the sunlight, so it will not and it will not last long. It will get degraded easily. Okay, so ساعتها it's not worth it لأنه it will not extend the shelf life. So that's why they prefer to rely on artificial colorant. But even if they are making orange juice from fresh fruits, okay, إذا عملوه from fresh fruit but they were obliged to add artificial colorant, the end consumer actually will dislike the fact of adding artificial colorant, and he will consider the product not anymore as fresh. So here they have to do this assessment to see whether it's worth it to go ahead with this option or not. لأنه they can simply move on, not using fresh fruit, and instead relying on concentrates with the flavors and colorants and mixed with water. So not really 100% fresh fruit. So if you can see the classification of colors according to FDA. So according to FDA, we have some colors called non-certified and some others certified. So usually all what is a natural colorant, it's exempted from certification, no need to certify it, but you can sell it, it can be commercial, but no need to certify it because it's already present in nature, such as, who can give me an example of a natural color? Such as, for example, anthocyanins, such as flavonoids. Who can give me more examples?
يعني مثل natural من البيتروت مثلا مش حافظة specific.
Anthocyanins from beetroots, right? Okay. So all of these are natural colorant. However, all what is certified, okay, whether it's artificial or natural identical, it should be certified. When I say it should be certified, that means it should be addressed and submitted to the FDA for their assessment and subsequent certification. So you cannot dispatch it in the market without a pre-market approval, okay? So who can tell me what is the difference between artificial, natural, and natural identical?
Artificial colorants are done in labs. They aren't natural. The naturals are extracted from plants, maybe,
okay.
And natural identical, they have similar characteristics like the natural ones, but they aren't 100% natural.
Okay, because so what is basically the difference between natural identical and natural and artificial?
Maybe they
Artificial, they are synthesized. They are not. They are
okay,
not.
natural identical
they
are natural identical. Are they synthesized in the lab or not?
I guess so لأنه
بلا in the lab.
same يعني عندهم نفس المواصفات تبعية natural, but they are.
but they aren't natural.
Okay.
But
نفس
are man-made.
المواصفات. So here basically you mean the composition. يعني basically natural, I bring a vanilla bark and I extract the flavor, okay? Artificial, I go to the lab, I mix like 20 chemicals together and I will end up by having a vanilla flavor. The natural identical, I bring my natural flavor, I analyze it through chromatography techniques, and I realized that this natural flavor is equal A plus B plus C plus D. So in the lab, I mix A plus B plus C plus D, but it's kind of synthesized. So natural identical, I'm imitating the natural composition, okay? But by in the lab, so by synthesizing it. So which one is the best option? For me, it's the natural identical. Why? Natural identical, first of all, it's more safe. Why? Because when you extract from vanilla bark, you know that and all what is in the nature, let's say barks, leaves, the fruits, vegetables, sometimes you can come up with impurities or with contaminants. So when you are extracting it, and even if you are purifying, you can end up by having some contaminants. But when you are mixing chemicals together, they are fully sterile. Number two, natural is not stable. So natural is not heat stable at all. So if you are adding a vanilla flavor and you are willing to heat the product, so you'll end up by losing the natural flavor. However, the chemicals are much more stable to heat, are much more stable to oxygen. So here you can encapsulate them. You can do many laboratory techniques to make the product more stable. And kind of, it's better than the artificial because the composition is very similar to the natural one. And price-wise, okay, the price is more expensive than the artificial, but more cheaper than the natural. So natural identical is the trend today, and in the majority of the companies, they are relying on natural identical flavor. Okay?
Also, it can never go extinct. It's
Exactly.
natural.
Exactly, لأنه the vanilla bark على اللونج ران أو مثلا إحنا ببلدان مثل لبنان we cannot extract this flavor. وعلى اللونج ران معقول يصير في extinction ل one species and you can end up actually by not being able to deliver the product. Okay, so كمان تنحمي كمان the plants, so it's better not to rely all the time on natural sources. So natural color versus synthetic. So with respect to the color, أكيد natural they are obtained from natural sources. They are processed by physical means, so by extraction. They are less stable. So artificial is much more stable, and artificial present a better uniformity of the color. But artificial is questionable with the level of health problems and at the level of the consumer acceptability. Which one is more expensive? Definitely the natural. The artificial is less costly, and artificial present a lower microbiological contamination because, as I told you before, the natural can be exposed to contamination all the time because it's natural. So it's extracted from nature with all what is called, with all the contamination exposed to. So encapsulation is the fact of encapsulating the color. So if I'm using a natural color and I'm afraid from oxygen or from heated, or from actually other compounds present in the matrix, so I can encapsulate, I can use chemicals to encapsulate. So the encapsulation will create a kind of a barrier that will protect the products from the other factors. So food preservatives, they are mainly used to slow or stop the growth of microbes in the food. So they keep the food in conditions where they cannot multiply and help control the spreading of bacteria. So we have two classes of preservatives. We have all what is natural, such as, for example, the salt is natural, the vinegar, the alcohol, the sugar. Okay, so here really no need to be cautious and take precautions while handling a class 1 preservative. However, when we pass to class 2 preservatives, definitely we should restrict the quantity used and such as benzoic acid, sulfite, and sorbate, and they should be regulated. And here I will pass to a slide comparing preservatives, okay? So when I say preservative, and if I tell you antimicrobial, it's a preservative. If I say antioxidant, it's a preservative. If I say chelating agent, it's a preservative. Who can tell me what is the difference between antimicrobial, antioxidant, and chelating agent?
يمكن بيختلفوا بالميكانيزم اوف تبعيتهم يعني
الاكشن.
ايه
اوكي
يعني
اوكي مثلا عم نشوف هون نحن فور اكزامبل انتي مايكروبيال. المكان اول شيء يعني الانتي مايكروبيال من اسمه انتي مايكروبيال so it is preventing the growth of microbes such as fungi, bacteria, mold and yeast. Antioxidant يعني it will inhibit the oxidation, so it will prevent the rancidity or all what is called oxidation of the product, browning, etc. So the chelating agent, it will prevent the ripening and oxidation, okay, and prevent أكيد the food from becoming brown and inhibit the bacteria. هلا mechanism wise مثل ما قالت رنا, they are different. يعني antimicrobial, it will reduce the moisture content and increase the acidity. Okay, so if I'm reducing the moisture content and I'm increasing the acidity, I'm aware that the bacteria requires the fatum, food, acidity, time, temperature, moisture. So if I reduce the moisture and I increase the acidity, so I'm controlling the bacteria. Antioxidant, okay, in mechanisms, free radical initiate peroxide formation at double bonds of fatty acids, okay? So basically, the antioxidant, it will work on chelating free radicals. Do you remember in the food chemistry course, we mentioned that the free radicals are not stable and the free radicals are prone to oxidation. So as long as I have free radicals in my media, so this will end up by having oxidation because they are free. So they are free, so they are free to be bound to oxygen, okay? Chelating agents from their name are products that can chelate metals. So we all know that metals are catalysts of the oxidation, right? So if I don't have the catalyst, because I'm chelating the catalyst, what will happen? The oxidation will be what? Slowed down, مظبوط ولا لا? So all of these are categorized under the preservative title, okay? But antimicrobial, I'm kind of controlling the factors affecting the bacterial growth. Antioxidant, I'm controlling the free radicals to inhibit their oxidation. A chelating agent, I'm controlling the metals, especially on top of them في عنا DTA and the polyphosphate. So here, I chelate the metal, and without the metal, the oxidation cannot occur. But all of these are preservatives. واضحة? Clear?
Yes, doctor.
Okay. So here we can see some common food preservatives such as the pickling. We use vinegar, sulfur dioxide, benzoic acid, sodium nitrite. We pass to the flavoring. I will skip the slide. أنا عم تاخدوا يمكن كتير عن the flavoring. بس أهم شيء نعرفه إنه we can either intensify the flavor or restore the losses of flavor. Here are the three classes. You can حكينا عنه natural, identical, and artificial. What are the problems by using natural flavors? أول شيء poor stability, low intensity, okay? They are sensitive to high temperature. They can exhibit variation in strength and quality depending on the product. The supply, مثل ما كانت عم تقول نهلة, I think, عن extinction. So they are saying that the supply of natural materials is becoming uncertain. معقول مرات نوصل محل إنه we do not have enough materials. So most of them are unstable and undergo changes, and many natural products, they contain enzymes, and this can lead to formation of off notes, and the toxicity has yet to be established. So I can tell you that with respect to the flavors, it's still questionable. We are not sure if natural is safer than artificial or just the opposite. So sometimes with respect to the flavors, they consider the artificial as being more safe than the natural. So what is the advantage of imitating the flavor? That's why I was telling you that I'm fully supporting natural identical, because they are cheaper than the natural, more stable. They can withstand severe heat processing. They can be produced in variety forms, alcohol-based, oil-based, encapsulated powder, all the time available, and will ensure the consistency of the quality. Because again, we mentioned that whenever we extract it from the plant, we will end up by having sometimes inconsistency in the quality of the flavor. So this advantage of using imitating flavor, so original flavor is more acceptable because imitation, it's an imitation. So they understand that it's chemical by the end. So sometimes we face some difficulties in labeling. So imitation flavors are not the real flavors. So this will be kept in the mind of the consumers that we are imitating, and here we are obliged to use solvent as a carrier, and it's restricted by legislation. And sometimes we can have some problems in the texture of the end product because we are using chemicals, and sometimes these chemicals can be affected by the environment of the product. So antioxidant قلنا by preventing the browning. How? By either mainly by being by affecting the free radicals, okay? أو مثل ما قلنا chelating agents, sometimes they are being considered as antioxidant because they will retard the oxidation. أكيد on top of the list we have artificial BHA and BHT, butyl hydroxyanditol and toluene, and we have as natural vitamin C. هلا used كتير بالفروت juices أكيد. We added to basically to compensate the losses during the pasteurization of the juice. Okay, emulsifiers and stabilizers. So أكتر emulsifier that we use هو lecithin A322, and stabilizer that we use with 410. stabilizer in order to maintain the emulsion. Thickening agent نستعمل كتير البكتين والxanthangum in order to produce jello, jelly jam. Okay, it's a thickening agent. Gelling agent. عندنا thickening xanthangum هو أكتر thickening. الgelling هو البكتين. Okay. هلا xanthangum I can tell you in Lebanon they do not use it a lot. بس برا أكتر. Okay. لأن لبنان ما عنا كتير تصنيع سوبس. ما بعتقد في ولا معمل بلبنان بيعمل شوربة. So يستعملوها to thicken the sauces. Okay. So ممكن إذا بتشتروا باستا sauces ممكن تلاقوا على الليبل xanthangum E 415. So emulsification, when we mix oil and water. So here the emulsifiers should have a water-loving end and an oil-loving end. So hydrophilic and hydrophobic. So hydrophilic, basically the head is hydrophilic and the tail is hydrophobic. It will form the micelle in order to maintain the product. So here we can see that we can have emulsifiers presenting a water and oil emulsion or oil and water emulsion. Here it depends on the product. What is major and what is minor. Okay. يعني مثلا butter is water and oil. Okay. So here, as you can see in the figure, so this is oil and water. So we have the continuous phase and we have the dispersed phase. So here the water is the continuous phase and the oil is the dispersed phase. However, here the water is the dispersed phase and the oil is the continuous phase. So here it's water and oil like the butter. So in the butter, what is the major phase, the oil or the water? The butter.
Water.
Oil.
The oil بالbutter the oil
oil
is the
exactly. Okay, مثلا إذا عم نحكي ب salad dressing, what is the major phase?
the water.
Water.
Exactly. So this is why we have to select the emulsifier. We have some emulsifiers working on emulsification on emulsions, water and oil, some others oil and water. Okay, this is according to a factor called HLB. Okay, hydrophilic lipophilic balance. So the more the HLB is high, so إذا نحن عنا hydrophilic lipophilic balance is high, so it can be used for water and oil emulsions or oil and water. إذا كانت high. يعني إذا hydrophilic lipophilic balance is high, so it is to be used, this emulsifier should be used in water and oil or oil and water. إذا hydrophilic is high, it should be used in oil and water. يعني we need the water as a major phase. يعني احنا عم نقول HLB, so it's hydrophilic lipophilic balance. So the hydrophilic, if it's high, so it should be used in the emulsion where the water is the major phase. When the water is the major phase, oil and water or water and oil?
Oil and water.
Oil and water, exactly. And when it's low, we use it in water and oil, okay? So if the hydrophilic is low, so basically we use these emulsifiers in